welcome to SSW TV. We're at NDC Sydney, and I'm here with Fabien and Jason from Domain. Welcome, guys.
Thanks for having us.
I hear you guys had a really interesting talk where you're talking about ramping up the number of deployments you do and your continuous delivery process.
Yeah, so that was basically the story of how we went from 1 or 2 deployments a fortnight to up to 150 deployments a week to production.
150 deployments a week to production?
Yes.
So that's a lot of deployments per day. How did you get there?
Lots and lots of sweat.
Lots of sweat?
Lots of late nights. No, it wasn't that hard. There were hard moments, but really we planned it well in advance and got a lot of good guidance. And got a DevOps culture happening, and it all rolls now on its own kind of thing.
And that's a big change it's interesting that you bring the culture up first. Was the change to culture harder than what was harder, the change to culture or the actual physical implementation?
A little bit of both, I guess. So the first thing, it didn't actually happen overnight, right? We started simple, get a few projects automated. So we had some project that would take up to a full day to deploy, for example. Now we've got that down to like 46 seconds or something like that, which
really
is
went
already
from a day to 46
yes.
seconds.
So yeah, we started with
metrics.
So yeah, that means our guys can spend more time working on their features and not necessarily on deploying. So that's always good. But I guess that's it started really from the pain of having to go through this every time. Like when you see devs that are saying, well, hang on, I've done this change, but you can't wait until someone else does another change before going live because I really don't want to deploy. That's when it feels like, yes, we have to do something about it. So when we got the opportunity from the business to invest in those things and basically the mandate to move faster, that's the first thing we wanted to do.
Wow, that's fantastic. So you obviously had buy-in from the business to actually get this cultural change happening.
Yeah.
And and obviously you had to get buy-in from the devs as well. Mm-hmm. What would you say is the main cultural, so what were the changes in culture that needed to happen?
The pivot, we had to remove the fear, really, because as it was, I hesitate to use the word toxic, but the deployment culture was a little toxic. People were scared to deploy, so changes would build up, and the packages would be ever bigger, and the risk of a deployment would grow. And then of
course, it's a much more dangerous deployment.
Yeah, and then actually manually deploying, there was the risk that an ops guy, because we were throwing packages over the wall to a shared ops team, an ops guy could make a little mistake, or just a human error, or he could step away from his desk at an inopportune time and everything starts to fall apart.
And so the recovery time is massive as well.
The recovery time is huge, what we had to do was, the pain was already there, so everybody wanted to change. Yep. We just had to kind of, reassure everyone that it was not going to hurt on the way, but then prepare the business as well for the fact that this is going to be costly. Yep. We might have little backward steps while we're doing it. Yep. We might have tiny outages while we're getting this stuff right. But luckily everybody felt the need to move forward.
Wow, that's great.
And now the main goal was to increase our velocity as well. So the business, that's a risk to take, right? Are we going to stay the way we are, or are we just going to take it to the next level and deliver more features? So
definitely. And that's it's really amazing when you take that example of spending a day doing a deployment. Like that's a day of productivity that's been lost. So all of a sudden you've got people actually shipping code more. And
the thing as well is that it tends to be your best devs doing that, right? Doing the deployments because, they are the ones who know, and do you trust them to get it right? So while they're busy doing something that they shouldn't do, they're not writing the great code they should be writing. So
Well, interesting. So that's interesting to talk about the cultural changes, but what about the physical implementation? How are you guys, obviously it's a big topic, but from a high level, how are you getting that many deployments out in a day?
In technology terms? We've got a highly automated build chain and continuous delivery chain, which is TeamCity, Octopus Deploy, a whole load of PowerShell, pushing it onto Amazon Web Services. Yep. And we scale that very elastically. And we've broken everything up into microservices, so each individual deployment is a much smaller unit. Yep. So we can do more a day more safely. And this app goes out, that app goes out, and they're all very loosely coupled. So a tiny mistake here doesn't really cascade through the system so much. So that just means we can be throwing stuff out as the features become ready.
Excellent.
And on the application side, I guess that one of the things that was important is that everything was done in standard. So for each microservice that we build, they all follow the same pattern. In fact, we've got Visual Studio templates for those so that they're always baked the same way. So that means that then the deployment process, when we've got a new service, we don't have to worry too much about it. It's like clone, done.
Excellent.
And for those guys, on the upside, it's a lot easier to maintain as well.
It's predictable and it's easy to use.
So it's predictable and it's easy, but obviously there's a DevOps overhead now that you're managing all of these different microservices that you are deploying. How do you go about managing that overhead?
Well, we've got a dedicated ops team now.
Yep.
I was brought in as the first one at the very start of this project, and we've built the team since then. It's still only 7 guys, 8 guys including the manager. So what we've done is empowered the devs to do a lot of their own work. We've encapsulated a lot of the complex ops code into smaller sort of domain-specific language chunks that they can include in an Octopus deployment to just keep their infrastructure in line without having to involve us.
Wow.
I mean, they can ask us a quick question, we'll say, yeah, just change that line, deploy it, it'll be fixed. So yeah, it's very decentralized and quick.
Excellent. And so how many, so you said 7 guys in the kind of the ops area, how many developers is that working with?
So this process is mostly for the backend services. We're still trying to work out what we're doing for front-end and node services, let's say. But for the backend devs here, we've got about 70 of them, I think, at the moment. Okay. And on the upside, there's 2 Windows, 3 Linux, 2 DBAs.
Interesting. Okay, that's great. And so if people are looking to go down this track and they're thinking, wow, I'm finding it really hard to deploy, I'm having a lot of outage, I want to move down, using TeamCity and Octopus and deploying more regularly. What do you think what are the pitfalls, what are the stumbling blocks that you hit where you can say, hey, if we'd have known this, we'd have had a smoother path?
I'd say probably the one thing to watch out for is not to try to do too much in the first place. Like, don't spend 6 months trying to do it and then find out that, well, okay, that's actually not going to work out. Or just like for us, we started with our old legacy applications and just automating the deployments on premise on our old data center. So yeah, that's one step forward. It was a little bit better, and then we invested a bit more time in baby steps, really, all the way until, well, we never finished. We're
never going to finish.
Yeah.
You're continuously improving, yeah?
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, the very first step was to take this monolithic application that was taking a day to deploy, and I scripted that down and got it down to about an hour, which we thought was a massive improvement, and we were like, yes, we're the best, brilliant, yeah. But then we got more tools into the chain, and we got kind of smarter at what we did, and then we got that down even smaller, and then we're like, well, why does an ops guy even need to run anything? We'll just get someone else to push a button, and So we've got product managers can push out releases now, devs can push out releases, and releases can happen on a merge or a commit.
Wow.
Actually, that was the one of the funny things for our very first automated deployment of the domain website. We actually got one of our product managers to press the button. We've got a picture of that, and that's the change in mentality just there.
That's a great thing. I had a similar client where it was the developers would actually call in and they'd actually have they didn't have permission to actually do deployment. So because it was they'd actually have it. They'd check in, it'd build, it'd bundle, it'd put it in Octopus. But it was actually then they always said, look, it's the business's decision when to deploy features. So it actually removes that. Developers can focus on building code, and the business can decide when it's time to actually ship the features, and that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Well, that's one way of doing it, but what we do is we tend to think of a feature that isn't deployed as being some kind of excess inventory in a way, in a manufacturing sense.
Interesting.
So it's sitting there, it's not earning you any money, and it's not really being actively tested either.
Yeah.
So it's just idle and it's wasted.
And you're gonna you can have conflicts during merges as well. Like the longer you leave it on this different branch, the harder it's going to be to bring it back.
No, we're talking about it's in UAT.
So we'll push stuff.
Yeah.
These features, if they're not completely 100% ready, we'll still push the code into production, but we've got feature toggles to turn things on and off.
Wow.
So a new feature can be just toggled away or just locked down to just internal users.
That's great.
So we can start testing immediately in the production environment if we need to.
Excellent.
Yeah.
It's in production or it didn't happen.
Yeah, wow, that's fantastic. Hey, look, thank you very much for sharing your story.
Thanks for having us.
It's been really interesting. And thank you for joining us on SSW TV.
Hey everybody, it's me, Scott Hanselman, here with Adam Kogan at NDC Sydney. We're hanging out. It's SSW Video. How are you, sir? That's how you do an intro. No, go ahead. I'll be right here, please.